the Australian bushfire season, he's been doing it in pretty much the coolest way imaginable. You see, Mark works in a team at the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service, or CAMS.
Copernicus is the European Union's Earth observation program, and what that means is that it's monitoring the whole Earth environment.
And the way it does this monitoring is via a network of satellites called the Sentinels.
So there's a number of these, and they all measure slightly different things in the environment, so the ocean, the land, and also the atmosphere.
This Sentinel system is a genuine network of satellites.
There are currently 4 different versions in space, so Sentinel 1, 2, 3, and 5P, so they don't quite follow in numerical order. And then there's multiple versions of similar, so there's 2 versions of Sentinel-1, 2 versions of Sentinel-2, and 2 versions of Sentinel-3.
Okay, so if you're an obsessive numbers nerd like me, you're probably wondering what happened to Sentinel-4. Look, don't fear, it's not at the bottom of an ocean or drifting off into deep space. They just didn't launch the Sentinels in numerical order, which is totally not at all frustrating. I'm not going to lay awake at night thinking over and over again about what happened to Sentinel-4 and why they didn't launch it. It's fine, it's fine. Anyway, this network of satellites tracks all varieties of air pollution.
We're essentially running a weather forecast, but rather than forecasting temperature and pressure and rainfall, we're predicting the path which has found relationships between the fire rated power and how much of the fuel, how much vegetation is consumed by a fire. By extension, there's other scientific work which shows how you then estimate how much carbon dioxide, other carbon gases, particulate matter, and all the other pollutions related to fire are emitted.
When you calculate the emissions from Australia's recent summer of bushfires, you start to see where these fires burned most intensely.
I mean, for Australia as a whole, it hasn't been a record year. I think there was a couple of years in the early 2010s where there was a lot more fire activity in Queensland and Northern Territory. And those still stand out as the biggest fire years in our data set for Australia. But for New South Wales and Victoria, particularly those fires at the end of December and early January this year, you can see they were several times higher than the total estimated emissions for all the other years that we have in the data set.
Here's a sobering comparison. 431 million tonnes of carbon dioxide have been released by Australia's bushfires over the past 6 months. That's more than the combined annual CO2 emissions of the 116 lowest emitting nations. That's just so much CO2. But it's another bushfire pollutant that's had arguably a more immediate and visceral impact on the many people living up and down the east coast of Australia.
Smoke from bushfires once again choked the city, with the air in some parts becoming extremely hazardous.
It has never been this bad. The air pollution in Sydney is out of control.
Health authorities say this ongoing pollution is unprecedented and poses a serious risk to people's health.
Those with respiratory disease are being told to keep their medication at hand, to shut the windows and stay inside until conditions ease tonight.
We're also using satellite observations of things related to smoke pollution and pollution in general. We have a measurement called aerosol optical depth, and it's basically a measure of how much the sky is darkened by the presence of these aerosols or particulate matter. And we model this in our forecast system, and then by combining the satellite observations with our model, we can provide the best and most up-to-date information on smoke, transport, and where the pollution is going.
The smoke particulate from our bushfires has circled the globe.
I mean, that was very clear in the satellite imagery, and you can see these very sort of grey, browny colours all the way across southeastern Australia. And in some of that satellite imagery, you could then see as it was going across the Tasman Sea, as it was going past New Zealand and out into the South Pacific, you could still see this sort of browny coloured air mass that was moving off towards South America. And it seems to be the case that these fires were so strong and so intense that a lot of the smoke basically just went straight into the upper atmosphere. And once it's in the upper atmosphere, it can last for a much longer time. It's colder, so the chemistry is slower, and also the winds are stronger, so then you can see that they really travel very quickly across the ocean, past South America, and in some cases, all the way back round to Australian longitude.
33 people were killed in this summer's bushfires. Numbers don't get much more sobering than that. But next to this loss of human life, perhaps the most emotionally impactful statistics come from what this fire season has done to our wildlife.
Oh, as I've been saying, it's a national tragedy. Wildlife has been left without habitat, food and water.
The effects to animals are out of this world. You've got the lack of water, but when fire's been through, without rain, it's really hard for the bush to regenerate, so you've got no food. And whether that's fresh shoots for the wallabies or flowing nutrients coming down the stream for the turtles, you know, it's really, really confronting.
I think in a word, catastrophic. And that comes from looking at the numbers of individual animals that were included in the fires. The current estimate is that over 1 billion is killed.
1 billion animals. I'm sure you've heard that particular number, and for good reason. It's horrifying. Professor of Ecology Chris Dickman is the scientist behind that statistic.
Yeah, so to come up with this of the billion, we went back to a study that was carried out in 2007 to look at the effects of legally approved land clearing. In the 8 years up to 2005, the state government approved 640,000 hectares of forest and woodland habitat to be cleared. And we want to know how many animals that was. Take that figure multiplied by the number of hectares legally approved for land clearing, we come to a figure of 104 million, which was the number of animals we estimated were killed by the legal approvals.
And the bushfire calculations were done in exactly the same way. Multiply your average density estimates by area burned, and you get an approximation of the number of animals affected.
The first time I did that, when 3 million hectares of forest and woodland estate had burned, the number came out to around 480 million. With the fire extent spreading by the end of December, early January, the figure went up to 800 million for New South Wales alone. And because Victoria then was also on fire, particularly in Gippsland, we thought it was reasonable to extrapolate the densities from New South Wales into the adjacent Victorian habitats. If you do that, you end up with an area burned of about 6.25 million hectares, which equates to over 1 billion animals that are part of the fires. And when I say animals, it's again those three groups. One, the terrestrial mammals, doesn't include the bats, but it does include the birds and the reptiles.
When we talk about over 1 billion animals killed, not all of these deaths occur immediately.
Not all of the animals that were estimated as being in the path of the fires would be necessarily killed by the flames that would have been incinerated. Clearly, a lot would, and some of the images of burning koalas and kangaroos show that many were killed. But a lot will go underground, that the burrows perhaps that emerge later on. But the prospects of survival for them in very broadly burnt landscapes would be just almost zero. It's hard to imagine that if you're a small mammal, you come out and you're surrounded by kilometres of ash. There's going to be no food, no water, no shelter. If you do survive the fires, you've got to run the risk of starvation, and you're likely also to be picked off by opportunistic predators. So things like magpies, currawongs, little crows, ravens will be coming in, and so too will introduce predators like the red fox and feral cat. So there may be a few survivors that get away. Birds may well escape the flames, but in many cases, unless they can find undisturbed habitat that's unoccupied, they're going to have a tough battle to find the habitat in their own right. Most birds are territorial, and if the habitat's undisturbed, it'll be saturated with birds anyway. So displaced birds that are probably already stressed are going to have a very difficult time finding anywhere to go. So my assumption is that when the fires have gone through, everything dies.
As immensely bleak as this picture is, here's the kicker. This estimate of over 1 billion animals killed, it probably undersells reality.
Even though 1 billion is a big number, it's clearly an underestimate. And the reason for saying that is that it's based on 6.25 million hectares of burned forest and woodland, whereas we know that over 10 million hectares are burned if you add in Queensland, South Australia, WA and Tasmania too. It also is conservative because it doesn't include forest bats, and we know that forest bats are numerous. If you go into any patch of forest on the east coast on a good night and set a bat trap, you'll get dozens of bats. But we didn't have density estimates for them, so they didn't comprise part of the estimate of the billion that would have been killed. We also didn't include frogs or fish, again because we didn't have density estimates. And then if you expanded to include invertebrates, there have been some estimates that as many as 240 billion have been incinerated by the fires in just New South Wales and Victoria alone. So yeah, 1 billion sounds a big number, but it's a very conservative one.
So best case scenario, over 1 billion animals killed. What does this mean for the regeneration of these ecosystems in the long term?
There are a number of elements to that. One is that if you have species whose entire geographical ranges or populations have been in the path of the fires, it may well be they don't survive. If they go extinct, then the communities won't be able to rebuild to what they were before, simply because some species will not be there to come back. On the other hand, for species and systems that have been through fires before, if the fire intensity has not been too great, many of the trees will survive. They'll begin to resprout soon after the fires have gone through. And if there are unburned patches in the landscape, then there will be refuges where a whole range of organisms will be able to hopefully persist. And then when the surrounding habitat begins to recover, they'll be able to move out into the regenerating forest. And within anywhere from 2 to 10 years, perhaps, depending on the species and the ecosystem, you might get a pretty full recovery. And that's for, I guess, the more common species and these systems that haven't been so badly affected by the fires. But in areas where the trees have been killed by the intensity of the fires, and there are many areas where the fires have been very severe, if the trees fall over because they're dead, and you're looking at rebuilding the forest community, it might take 100 years.
And it's not just the ecosystems that burned that will be affected by the bushfires. There are flow-on effects for many other areas.
In one sense, flow-on effects is literally what it is. It's the flow-on effects into the rivers and lakes. And there's been a bit of discussion about the effects that big rainfalls will have when they come, and washing ash and other debris into the rivers and lakes. It will almost certainly kill a lot of the invertebrates, a lot of the endemic freshwater crayfish in the line of fire there, but so too things like the platypus. So absolutely, we're looking not just at the areas burned, bad though they are, we're potentially looking at much more extensive effects outside.
I can't listen to Chris Dickman without feeling completely overwhelmed with grief, I have to be honest. The numbers from these bushfires feel incomprehensible. But Joel, you have actually helped me make some sense of them, even though there is no sense to be had.
And I think that's the power of numbers at a time like this. They give us a sense of rationality in a completely irrational time.
Yeah, and I'm hanging on to some hopeful numbers. The number of volunteers, the number of dollars people have donated. Thank you so much for bringing us this show. What are you brewing in the next episode of Science Friction?
Next time is a story, a very human story of evacuation from these fires. But really it's about the complicated, messy ways that we deal with life or death situations.
So messy. And Joel Werner, the host of Sum of All Parts, the ABC's podcast that really brings you big-hearted, adventurous and often out there stories from the world of numbers. My thanks to studio engineer Matthew Sigley. We will catch you next week. You can catch us on Twitter at Natasha Mitchell.
And at Joel Werner.
There you go. Even the bloody swamp wallaby walked off in the end of that. And some dickhead was so busy videoing, he walked straight through his freshly made coffee. Such is life. Ciao.